Rev it up and welcome to Cars Yeah, show number 1515.
The obstacle is my path.
This is Cars Yeah, where you'll enjoy interviews with inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Mark Green is here to provide you with a fuel injection of automotive inspiration. So get in, sit down, buckle up, and get ready for a wild ride here on Cars Yeah.
Hello, inspiring automotive enthusiasts, and welcome to Cars Yeah. I'm revved up and so excited to share with you today a very special guest named Mark Wilson, who's calling in from beautiful Fallbrook, California, down close to where I grew up in Southern California. Mark Wilson grew up in a car family with a father who's an automotive journalist and a mother who loved motorsports. He worked with Stewart Paterson in his race prep shop and was gifted a Formula Ford, which he promptly started racing. That is cool. Mark's career started as a test driver for marketing claims and progressed into high-performance driving, coaching, and marketing events. He travels the country and works with OEMs. He coaches private clients, and he's even trains special forces. In 2016, he set his sights a little bit higher and embarked on a flying journey with a goal to be a commercial pilot, allowing him to fulfill his ultimate dream of flying and driving fast. We'll be back in just a minute to talk to Mark, but first a word from our valued sponsors that make this show possible. We'll be right back. Hey, Cars Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Covercraft. I've protected my vehicles with their products for decades. Want to keep your vehicle's interior looking new? It's easy with Covercraft seat covers. They'll protect your seats from the daily abuse of pets, children, weekend adventures, and even those everyday spills. It's a fast, easy, and inexpensive way to keep your vehicle looking new. All Covercraft seat covers are easy on, easy off design that are machine washable. You can choose from many fabric options, colors, and accessories, all designed and carefully sewn for your special vehicles. Their seat gloves are semi-custom fit for cars and trucks, and their seat savers, a favorite of mine, are custom tailored to fit your seats like a glove. Work truck seat covers are tough, durable, denim weight fabric. It's like putting a pair of rugged jeans on your truck's seats. Want to stay warm? Covercraft also offers seat heaters. Covercraft is the right choice. Learn more today at covercraft.com and tell them Mark at Cars Yeah sent you. That's covercraft.com. Are you a Cars Yeah subscriber? If you're not, go to carsyeah.com, click on the free book button, and I'll send you my free filler up book. It's a very cool book I created of fuel filler fun, some very cool imagery, and great quotes from past guests here on Cars Yeah. Plus, you'll get my weekly email follow-up and my weekly blog. Just go to carsyeah.com, click on the free book button, and I'll send it to you right away. Thanks for subscribing. Hey, Mark, welcome to Cars Yeah. Are you buckled up and ready for a fun ride?
All 6 points are buckled. Let's go.
Good. Well, hopefully we won't need all those. I'll try to keep it between the guardrails here. Before we jump into the questions, though, could you tell our listeners maybe one little thing that most people don't know about Mark Wilson?
I got my start in the automotive world by learning how to walk, quite literally. I learned how to walk by pushing. Yes, I learned how to walk by pushing my dad's race car tires around.
Well, that's kind of cool. Of course, your mom maybe was a little unhappy with the black palm prints all over the walls after you did that, but well, that's pretty cool. I like that. So you've literally been smelling rubber your whole life.
I have been, yeah. I think I was 6 weeks old when my parents took me to the Monterey store.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's cool. You know, my daughter was about that age the first time I took her. Walked around with her on a little backpack on my back all weekend long. But I didn't quite get her to convert to being a car gal. She just isn't that interested, but I think it worked for you.
It did.
Yeah, very cool. Well, listen, let's start this journey that we will call your life with a success quote or a mantra. This is some kind of saying I like to say that's instrumental or been instrumental in forming your life and your success. It's a nice way to get the tires smoking here on Cars Yeah. I know you love to drive, Mark, so grab the wheel.
So a little mantra I have is the obstacle is my path. And I developed that. I was riding motorcycles actually in Europe out in the woods and kept falling over a log on a very simple uphill. It's wet, muddy uphill and riding up, and there's this log across, and would look at it and I would usually fall over when I went across it. And finally I realized just changing the mental outlook from viewing that log as an obstacle in my path to viewing that log as my path was critical in getting over it.
This is really interesting. I thought you were going to maybe go in a different way here, being a driver and a racer and a coach, because when I went to driving school, racing school at Laguna Seca, I'll never forget the guy constantly yelling in my ear, look up, head up, look past what is in front of you, look down the track and so forth. Is there a little bit of that tied into this concept that you have?
Exactly. It's basically looking, like you said, at that path beyond that log, for my instance, that log. But for me, that log is still there. It's something you still have to overcome. Very simple, like a corner on a racetrack. It's still there. It might intimidate you. It might be something you've never done before. But if you view it as your path instead of an obstacle in your path, it makes that corner, the feeling of intimidation, much easier.
Oh, definitely. And I remember the other one is look through the corner, look at where you want to be, not where you're going. And it's like those videos you see of little kids that are riding bicycles and they're looking at the bush and they just ride right into the bush or the side of a car or a telephone pole. We've all done that. And it's kind of like, you think about people being concerned about things. And of course, I'm not going to jump into the deal we're dealing with these days with coronavirus too much here. But when you focus on the negativity, it's like that which we manifest is before us. You and I talked about that in our pre-show chat. Instead of focusing on where you need to be, where you need to get past. How are some of the ways that you've utilized that concept in your life and your career?
Well, I probably should have taken it a little bit more to heart in some instances. But dealing with some challenges, it gets into that biggest challenge question later on. But, racing the Formula Ford, there were certain things you had to overcome, financial aspects. And it's like, well, just go get a second job. And if it means enough to you to race, you'll find a way of doing it. And then dealing with some of the setbacks in a race, like sometimes you get in an accident, sometimes you spin out, just developing the mental strength to pull through that, figure out what really is the root cause of it instead of being fearful of the car or don't know exactly what they're.
No, I know what you're saying. And you Formula Ford guys always upset me because when I raced vintage cars, I had a Lotus 18, but they would always lump me in with the Formula Fords. And you guys were driving 1,600 cc motors. Mine was 1,000. I had drum brakes, little Renault gearbox. I could never keep up. And it was so frustrating. And I had a good friend, Dick Buckingham, who ran Sovereign up here, and I remember him pulling me aside. He had a Jolas, which was kind of like a Formula Junior. Well, it was a Formula Junior, but more powerful. And I remember one time I was frustrated, and he said, look, don't race against those guys. Race against yourself. Try to improve your own time.
Yeah, that was I actually struggled with this question later on, too, the best piece of automotive advice. But my mentor, Stewart Paterson, really did tell me, he goes, you're racing the clock, and it's critical. Even that clock will keep pushing you and you might be in the lead of the race, but if you back off, then you're going to start making mistakes. And if you just keep your foot down and keep applying yourself and keep the focus there, you'll continue pushing forward. And I think that's a critical mental state to be in.
Do you think this also has a good relationship when you are, a lot of people compare themselves to others. I'm 35 and I don't yet have a house, but two of my friends do. So therefore I am a failure. And then you beat yourself up over that. Or so-and-so has 3 cars. I only have 2 or 1. There's kind of a relationship there as well, don't you think?
There is. And that's one of my favorite parts about coaching and the automotive world, and especially racing, is there's a lot of parallels to life. So personal example, my brother's younger than me and he bought a house, and that's great for him. And I had this, existential crisis a little while ago. I was like, wait, did I make the mistake? Should I have a house by now?
Right,
I have
exactly.
a down,
exactly what I was talking about.
Yeah. I have a down payment for a house in that race car. My priorities lay somewhere else, and that put me down a different path. My brother's got a beautiful house and it's nice, and I have a beautiful time, doing what I do and racing cars. And so it's different paths. And to a certain extent, we shouldn't be comparing ourselves to others, but comparing what we want in life versus what we're getting out of life.
Exactly. No, I think it's a good concept. Well, let's talk a little bit about this life that you're built for yourself. Driving, coaching, now flying. What has you excited and fired up about your career these days, Mark?
So I really enjoy operating machinery and interacting with physics. Some people say, "Oh, are you an adrenaline junkie?" And I don't view that as being a core principle of mine, but I love the blend of a scientific pursuit mixed with an artistic pursuit. So what's great about cars and flying is you can sit down, you can study the physics, you can study the engineering, and you can tweak all those to get a desired product. So in race car terms, formula car versus stock car, they're going to be different scientific and engineering problems to solve there. However, once you're driving the car, you can't think so scientifically. You have to think more artistically. And it's a great mashup.
Yeah, exactly. Very fascinating. At what point did you realize, aside from pushing your dad's race tires around at 6 months, did you realize that driving and being involved in this world of driving was the right thing for you? And why do you think that was?
When I was about 6 or 7 years old, I started reading books on, how to drive the proper line and just started absorbing a lot of that information. However, fast forward to junior high school, I would walk up to the bus stop, which is about half a mile from my house, and wait there for the bus to come. And usually every morning there was a old Mini Cooper that would run through the corner at the bus stop. And I just remember it being such a cool little car. And then when I got into high school, the bus route actually changed slightly. And it took me down a little further away from my house. And on that high school bus route, I could see where that Mini Cooper resided. And so I ran cross country and track in high school. And on one of my runs from my house, I just decided to run down to what ended up being my friend's house. And he just happened to be outside that day working on his Mini Cooper. So I ran down the driveway, introduced myself, took a look at the car up close and personal. It was my first interaction with the old Mini Cooper. He was buttoning it up a little bit, and so he, finished up what he was doing, and then took me for a spirited drive around the block, and I was just hooked.
Yeah, those things are incredible. The first time I got to riding one was back when I was in college, and my roommate had a friend. His friend ended up living next door to us, and he had one of these old 60s Mini Coopers. And he took me on this ride from Pacific Beach, California, up to the Cross, Mount Soledad, there in La Jolla. And you live down in that area. Yeah. And driving up the hill to that cross and then down the other side, Hillside Drive, I was like, oh my gosh, he'd go into a corner and I go, stop. And he's like, don't worry. And it was like I just remember it feeling like a slot car. And then he let me drive it back. And I'm like, this is so cool. How can this car do this? These tiny little wheels and tires. And it's basically a brick, right? But yeah, they're phenomenal.
It's a street legal go-kart, and they are great.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we have a longtime listener here, Chris Kimball, who's smiling right now because I know he listens every day. He's a very tall guy. I'm not tall. He's very tall, and he has an old Mini Cooper, and he can crawl into that thing, and it puts a big smile on his face. I think he might even like it better than his Pantera. I'm not sure, but could be. We'll see. Well, let's talk about, when you referred to it earlier, a big challenge or a big failure that you maybe have faced in your life and your career. Kind of walk us through it, but more importantly, what did it teach you so that you could come out in a positive way on the other side?
So when I was racing the Formula Ford, I happened to be in college and trying to work my way through college and work to afford the Formula Ford. And it's safe to say that there wasn't a lot of time that I had. It was one of those rare instances at this point in time where I had a little bit more money than time. So I had someone else prep the car for me. We went up to Willow Springs to do a test day, and we had a good test day schedule sorted out. We offloaded my car in the trailer and went through my unfortunately limited morning check and hopped in the car for a warm-up session and drove it around. And it was cold that day, and so, in a proper race car, getting the shocks up to temp is a huge deal. So I was getting everything up to temp, and I could feel this little vibration that I didn't remember. And so I did about 3 laps, and I'm like, this is a weird vibration. In the back of my head, I'm like, oh, I didn't check the lug nuts this morning because my mind had been with work and hadn't been really with the car. Coming down the front straight at Willow, critically past the pit in, and I was like, oh, lug nuts, I didn't check them. Okay, I need to slow down. So slotted first gear and just poked around the racetrack. Made it all the way to turn 8 at Big Willow, and that's when the left rear decided to part company with the car. It sheared off the lug nuts or lug studs. Then obviously that drops it down, sheared off the bottom shock mount and tore up some suspension. I spun twice and ended up alongside the road, and it just didn't have the money for the spare parts at that time. And I was just a little wreck. And from there, I just had felt like I let the teammate down and, let everybody down, because there was about, I think 7 people came up for that test and said we had that big testing program to get through. I mean, I'll freely admit this, even via public podcast. I mean, I excused myself from everyone for a minute and walked over and actually sat on the podium at Willow, which if you've been there, you're familiar with it, and literally cried against the wall thinking, how did I mess up? I let all these people down. Came back from that, went back to the garage and, dove into whatever work I could. And my mentor, Stewart Paterson, who I worked, alongside with in his prep shop, getting this thing going, was, really critical. He's like, hey, yeah, you made a mistake, but, learn from this mistake. Like that's why we're here, to learn this stuff. And, even more so, recover from that mistake. Like, accept that you made it, figure out how to change it, but don't disappear and retreat from, life in this case. He goes, come back and, do what you can to help me, and don't be the rust. That was really critical to me too, and something I'll always be grateful for Stewart for imparting on me. It's like, yeah, we do make mistakes, but we can move forward from them, and that's in general too. Like, racing taught me that. It's like, do whatever you're going to do during the day, and then have a debrief session with yourself and think about it, or even think about it with someone else. And I did that when I started flying. I would fly, internalize what I could while I was flying, but a big piece of that would be coming home and just having a mental debrief with myself. What can I do better? How can I change it for tomorrow? And I think that was a big skill set that moved forward in flying, and also coaching. Coaching in the high performance driving arenas can be pretty stressful. And, I came up with some interesting tricks to mitigate that stress and, figure out, okay, what makes it stressful, and figuring some coaching tricks out and figuring the people out and the psychology of coaching in the car makes your life better. And I think I can trace all that back to sharing lug nuts off in a Formula Ford and crying in the corner about it.
Yeah. Well, you dodged a massive bullet there in one way, because if you'd been at speed on a track in a crucial corner and that had happened, you could have had a catastrophic accident into a wall or something like that. And so in that respect, you did listen to your inner voice a little bit. What was that vibration? Maybe I better slow down. Because some people won't. They'll go, well, I'll find it when I come in. Absolutely. Yeah, I had a wheel nut, one single lug nut come off of a Lola T290 on me going through a high-speed corner. And it scares the hell out of you, that's for sure. And it was one of the times that I had other people checking the torque and servicing the car, and I didn't do it myself. And I always did it myself as a promise, but I thought, well, they're professionals. They've done it. In this case, they missed it and it came off, and luckily I didn't hit anything too hard. But yeah, you'll never do that again. That's the great thing here. And I loved the story you shared with how that relayed into the other parts of your business, and definitely flying aircraft. I mean, you look at how pilots prep for a flight in so many ways, and you can't have a mistake up in the air. So great lessons learned there. Let's take a short break, thank our sponsors, and we will be right back. My favorite collector car magazine is Keith Martin's Sports Car Market. I've been a subscriber for decades. Sports Car Market is the Wall Street Journal for the enthusiast and the collector. It's your monthly must-read whether you dream of owning a collector car, have 2 cars, or 200. Sports Car Market has been around for 31 years, and it's filled with valuable articles, intelligent write-ups, and the latest auction sales. Go to sportscarmarket.com and subscribe today. Plus, you'll get the exclusive SEM guide to restoration shops included for free. At checkout, use the code CARSYEAH and receive a 50% discount on your digital subscription. It's an exclusive offer from me here at Cars Yeah. I'm Mark Green, and I love Sports Car Market Magazine. Are you looking for a way to get your products or services into the ears of thousands of automotive enthusiasts around the globe? I can help. This is Mark Green here at Cars Yeah, and I'd be honored to be an influencer and ambassador for your brand in a unique and personal way. 5 days a week, thousands of subscribers and listeners enjoy the Cars Yeah podcast and website. Contact me today and I'll show you how at mark@carsyeah.com or connect with me through the Cars Yeah website at carsyeah.com. If you're listening to Cars Yeah, you've probably spent some time working on your favorite ride. But how confident are you working on your finances? You may be able to rebuild a fuel injection system, but can you decipher the details of a mutual fund? If you're like me, investments, insurance, annuities, budgeting, and other financial concepts may seem a bit daunting, but what if I told you there's a book that describes these subjects and more in an easy-to-read and a very humorous way? My friend Chris Kimball, CFP, a longtime sponsor and past guest here on Cars Yeah, has written that book, and it's titled The Saga of Ike and Penny, a couple's humorous journey through the confusing world of finance. It's a fun look at things you need to know, everything from investing to effective ways to get rid of credit card debt, and it's probably the only book on finance with a VMAX on the front cover and a classic Mini Cooper on the back. The book's available at Amazon for just $10, and this book will dramatically improve the direction of your financial future. I gave copies to each of my children. All securities are through Money Concepts Capital Corp. Christopher Kimball Financial Services is not affiliated with Money Concepts Capital Corp. Get your copy, The Saga of Ike and Penny, today. All right, we're back here on this journey of your life we call Mark, and I'd love for you to tell a story that instigated this personal passion you have with cars and racing. You've alluded to this a couple points, but is there a real pivotal moment when you knew, you know what, I'm a car guy for life here?
Beyond the Mini Cooper story I told earlier, the critical thing was my Formula Ford journey, and so they tie in together, strangely enough. The Mini Cooper I bought as my first car. So I found a 1960 Mini Cooper in Eugene, Oregon. Went up during a Christmas break with my mom and scooped up the car and brought it back. Got it running in time to drive the last week to my senior year of high school. Then, drove it around a little bit, of course. I needed some more help on it. And we have a family friend, a gentleman named Stewart Paterson, who's also in Fallbrook, and he runs a prep shop. He's a factory-trained BMC mechanic. So I arranged with Stewart a cool little trade where we would trade time. I'd help him in his prep shop and clean up cars and do basic little mechanical work. And he'd help me with the Mini Cooper, like tuning carbs and some head work and just learning more about that. So I worked with Stewart for about 18 months. We worked not every day, but usually every day in the shop. I'd ride my bike up there and, hang out with him and, absorb as much as I could about the Formula cars, and started going to the racetrack with him and, just assisting, strapping people into cars and working there. And that was 2008. We went to Willow Springs with one of Robert's customers, a guy named Robert Biesinger. I was just doing the prep shop, mechanic thing and strapping Robert into car and changing gears if need be and making sure the cars are ready to go. Torquing lug nuts critically. And, And, Robert and Stewart were chatting in the corner while I was working on the car, and I could see them looking at me a little funky. And, I could hear Stewart say, yeah, he'd like to, and blah, blah, blah. And kind of, all of a sudden you get really curious. And so, Robert approached me and he said, hey, would you be interested in driving the Formula Ford? Of course. Naturally. And so Robert invited me back the following weekend to a Friday test day and said, why don't you come back and you can drive the car? And I was in college at the time and, didn't have a lot of money. So politely said, hey, I'd love to, but, I don't have the money for that. And he goes, oh, no. He goes, I'll pay for it as a way of saying, thank you for working on my car for the last 18 months. And I thought that was really neat. So we came back the following Friday. I'd been with Stewart all week, of course, like going over Willow Springs, and he was helping coaching me, and hopped into the car and drove the Friday test day and really enjoyed the experience of being in a Formula car. That was my first time in a Formula car, and just super neat experience. Very lucky. Late Friday afternoon, Robert approached me again, and he goes, "Hey, you're doing really well in the car, and I'm enjoying watching you watching you test." And he goes, "I have 2 cars here this weekend. I'm not feeling that well. Would you be interested in racing the car for me this weekend?" Yeah. And again, I followed with the, "Hey man, I'm a starving college kid. I can't afford this." And he goes, "Oh no, don't worry." He goes, "I'll sponsor you. Like I'll, enter you. And there's a couple steps you need to go through. You need to go to basically a rookie class tonight and go through, with Vara, go through their little flag class and, learn all this stuff and check off those boxes." Okay, cool. Let's do that. So, jump on that opportunity. Vara's race weekend schedule at that point in time was a qualifying session, a qualifying race on Saturday. And that qualifying race finishing position sets you up for Sunday's flag race, if you will. Go out for qualifying. I think I qualified 3rd or 4th. There's 8 cars in the field, pretty small field that time. Green flag comes for a qualifying race on Saturday. Foot goes down, and the car just doesn't go anywhere. It's just, making, Formula Fords make, about 114 horsepower, and this was probably making about 68. And something's wrong. So, of course, the field swamps me, and I pull into the pits on the first lap, and they check out the carburetor, nothing, go out for just another lap to see if anything's changed. Nothing's changed. I pull it in, finishing dead last on my qualifying race, and go back to the pit, take a little peek around, and we found a feed from plant that had gotten into the primary emulsion tube on the carburetor. And basically, no fuel being delivered, and no fuel equals no power. We pulled that out, tested the car really quick with they call sacrifice lap. You just go out and drive around really quick and make sure it works, and confirmed that it worked, and loaded up the car for Sunday, get strapped in, and head out for the morning warm-up. Car feels great, fantastic. We're going to start this race on Sunday and see what happens. So started dead last. Luckily, there's only 8 cars in the field. So I think by turn 1, I was in 5th place, and go through the rigmarole, basically pick off a few more cars. Mind you, this is my first race ever, and then also the longest period of time I'd driven the car. Found myself in 3rd place by about the 3rd or 4th lap, and track felt like it was getting a little slick, but no big deal. Managed to pass 2nd place, looking for 1st out there in the distance, and he had kind of checked out at that point in time. He actually spun into turn 3, and so I inherited the lead of the race.
Wow.
Now I'm pretty excited and stoked on life, and we continue on, and the track is getting greasier and greasier. And again, this is my first race ever, and the longest I'd driven the car at this point. So, you hear all the racing stuff when you're growing up, and you don't really know what it's like. I'm like, oh, my tires are going away, or something bad's happening. So I just drove as fast as I could, stupidly, and through turn 5 at Willow. So it's never been to Willow. Downhill entry that spoons out and bowls out and then goes up to turn 6. So come downhill in turn 5, everything's good. Turn the car in and try to get back on the power, and the rear end just lights up, and I just spin around. There's nothing I could do to catch it, and ended up stalled out and beached on the inside of turn 5. And I'm like, well, that's motor racing. That sucks. And I go to try to start the car won't start. And meanwhile, there it goes. Now 1st place by me, then now 2nd place. And I'm like, oh man, I was doing so well. And so I try to start this car up, not starting. And so I admit I probably gave up for what felt like an eternity, but it's probably about half a second. And I just said, okay, forget it. And this car won't start. I'm going to wait for the tow truck to show up. And like I said, felt like an eternity, but maybe half a second later, I said, forget that. Like, this car is going to start. The starter button is going to wear out, or the tow truck's going to show up. One of those 3, but I'm not just going to sit here and wait for a tow truck. So tried every combination I could, and finally just buried my foot in the throttle and hit that starter and just waited for it to light. Finally, it lit and was able to get going. Ended up finishing the race in third place, I believe. But I had
not bad.
No, not at all. It worked out okay. Finished the race in third and ended up with the fastest lap of the race, which is pretty cool. And so I came in and was like, all right, and got pushed back into the garage that Robert had rented, which is one of the few garages at Willow Springs. And I remember the general mood was, again, a bit odd. And, I was disappointed to have let everybody down from, spinning out in first place. And Stewart comes over, gives me a crisp handshake, says, good job. And then I'm still in the car at this point. And Robert comes over and he said, man, he goes, that was so cool to watch. And he goes, when you got into third place, he goes, I thought I'd have to give you that car. He says, but then you got all the way into first. And he goes, I was just so impressed with that. And he goes, then you spun out, and he goes, you made my decision easy. He goes, but my wife turned to me and said, the car is yours. And yeah. And it took me a few times. So he actually
gave you the car?
He actually gave me the car. Robert is an interesting individual. He came from a hard family life, and he quit high school early to go support his family. He's a very giving individual from an early age. And he recognized, something in me that he wanted to cultivate. And so he gave me his Formula Ford. And I tried to say, hey, man, you can't do that. And he just looked at me and he says, Mark, he goes, shut up. I just did it. He says, accept it before I change my mind. And so, yeah. And I looked at Stewart, and Stewart's he's shaking his head, yes. And so I said, oh, yeah, sure, Robert. Thank you. And so, as Stewart likes to joke, he goes, I think we got better miles per gallon on the way home because you're on cloud nine, no rolling resistance.
Float. And, exactly.
Yeah. And that launched a 10-year escapade, if you will, with the Formula Ford. And Robert continued to sponsor me and cultivate a future in the automotive world for me. And, the teaming up with Robert and also working alongside Stewart in his prep shop was, critical in being where I'm at now. So it was really neat.
What a story. Holy cow. Mm-hmm. That's amazing. Well, here's a bit of an introspective question for you. If you were a vehicle, what would you be?
That's actually the question I've struggled with the most.
Good.
Yeah, I would say the Sunbeam Tiger.
And why is that?
Mainly because I love Tigers, and I think they're neat car. They're, a little bit of a European or worldly car with an American heart. And I love that idea.
Yeah, they're very fun cars. Had a guy in our high school that had one, and I thought that was just the coolest thing. And I didn't know much about him at the time. And I remember he showed me the engine. I'm like, whoa, it's kind of like a Cobra almost, this big American engine inside this little English body. So very cool. Sunbeam Tiger. All right, Mark, we are entering what I call the last lap. You've been here many times. The white flag's out. Checkered flags in the distance. I'm going to fire off a series of questions and ask you to give our listeners some quick blips of that Sunbeam Tiger throttle. So here we go. What's one of your personal habits you believe has helped you be better throughout life, has contributed to your success?
I love exploring. So, when I'm traveling for work, exploring cities, exploring different cars. So, love driving everything from a smart car to cargo vans or supercars. I believe all the cars have something to teach you. And then also people and coaching, just being open to, psychology and people's ideas and learning from everyone. So just exploring the world as best I can.
How about if I could arrange for you to have a drink or a meal with anyone in the automotive or racing industry, living or deceased? Who would it be?
This one is a bit personal. Would be my papa, Neil Emery. So, Neil Emery is my grandfather on my mom's side, and he was a famous car customizer, owned a shop called Valley Customs, and is responsible for some very special cars.
How about the best automotive advice you've ever received from someone else?
This would be Stewart Paterson. Keep it on the island.
Keep it on the island. Like it. How about a great resource that's a go-to for you that people or that people should know about that you've enjoyed?
So one of my good friends says life is a participation sport. And I think if you're listening to this and you haven't done it before, participate in some focused driving. When we drive around on the street, it's just transportation, but focusing on driving and everything's really interesting. So participate, go out to the Porsche Experience Center, the BMW Performance Centers, the BMW UDE program, racing schools around the country. And then I have to plug, of course, accelerated change if you're female. Look into accelerated change and go to a track day somewhere and get behind the wheel of a car and focus on driving.
There you go. Is there a book that you've read you'd like to share with our listeners?
There's actually two kind of wide-ranging ones. Forever Young by John Young. He's widely known as the astronaut's astronaut. And he flew in Gemini, Apollo, and the shuttle program. And he wrote Forever Young, which is just a fascinating insight into the astronaut world. And I think it's great reading. And then the other book is Mindset by Carol Dweck. It's a great book on the changing your mindset from whatever you have now to a growth mindset. It's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love that one too. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. All right. We are up to the checkered flag here. And this last question can be a bit of a doozy. Today, I'm going to buy you any cool, fun collector car. Maybe it's a vintage race car. Maybe it's for the street, whatever you want. But there are a couple rules to the game, as they are with the guy who gets to write the check. One is it's the only cool collector car you can have. I want you to drive it and enjoy it. So no garage queens. And it's the last part of this is you can't sell it to buy a bunch of racing supplies or tires or finance your racing. You have to keep this vehicle. So choose wisely.
This is a hard one to limit to just one, but
of course,
simple answer for me as well. My grandfather Neil built a car that's known as the Polynesian, and that would be the Polynesian. Yeah, it's a beautiful car. I urge you to Google it and just look at it. I don't want to say anything too much about it on this. I just want you to see the visuals. It's a great car, and in times when car customizers were chopping things like a 32 Roadster look, my grandfather Neil was taking these big sedans and channeling them and sectioning them, and maybe a mild chop, but you could argue that especially a car like the Polynesian changed automotive design, and it's just a special car. It looks beautiful, and the great personal connection as well.
Does the car still exist today? Does somebody own it?
The car does exist today.
It does.
So
okay.
Yeah, it's out there. Another one is Dick Flint's Roadster that he built. That's widely known in the hot rod world as well. So I was choosing between the Polynesian and Dick Flint's Roadster, but I think the Polynesian wins.
Yeah, I think so. Well, you listeners out there will have to go Google that and check it out. I just took a quick peek. It's pretty darn cool. So you're going to like that, but we'll let you explore that one. You've taken me on a really fun ride today, and I guess we could say a flight a little bit since you're training and working on being a pilot, and you are a pilot. I really love you sharing your stories. Is there one little parting piece of wisdom or guidance you might offer our listeners before you rip off into the sunset in that beautiful Polynesian?
Keep it on the island.
Keep it on the island. Now, for those who aren't into racing and so forth, what exactly do you mean by that?
So this gets into more life stories as well. However, when I was racing, when Stewart would buckle me down in that 6-point harness in the Formula Ford on pre-grid, he would reef me down really hard in the belts and then usually shake my hand or something and just, say, keep it on the island. And when I was racing, I always thought, keep it on that black stuff, and progress forward. But it just got into more than that too. And I realized that keep it on the island is not only for racing, but for life too, managing yourself, keeping your focus and keeping what's important in front of you is critical.
Absolutely. Thanks for explaining that for us. Is there a way for people to follow along with you? I mean, do you play in the social media world, websites, or how can people keep up with your active life?
Yeah, Instagram's probably the best. I'm MarkSpeed22, the number 22 on Instagram, and you can reach out to me there, follow along a little bit of the car world, a little bit of the flying world, and some cool stuff.
There you go. I'll make sure I put a link to that on Mark's show notes page. Just go to carsyeah.com, type in Mark Wilson, and you will find him at MarkSpeed22 on Instagram. Mark, thanks for being so generous today with your time, your expertise, and for sharing your life with us. Until you and I talk again, I'll see you down the road.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Hey, Cars Yeah listeners, this is Mark Green. If you love the Cars Yeah podcast, I have something new for you. I've teamed up with Keith Martin, a collector car market expert and the editor of Sports Car Market magazine, to create the Buy, Sell, Hold podcast. Buy, Sell, Hold is the essence of collecting. Together, we take you on an educational ride into the collector car market, talking with industry experts, helping you navigate your collector car journey so you know when to buy, sell, hold. We talk with seasoned experts who buy, sell, and hold investment vehicles, and they'll share their insider secrets on how they make their buying decisions when it comes to making these important investments. You'll find the Buy, Sell, Hold podcast on the Cars Yeah website, on the Sports Car Market website, and if you're a podcast app subscriber to Cars Yeah, Buy, Sell, Hold will come right to your mobile device, just like the Cars Yeah podcast. Automatically. Join Keith Martin and me on a great new venture on the Buy, Sell, Hold podcast today.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's ride here at Cars Yeah. Drive on over to carsyeah.com to find show notes and inspiring automotive fun. Download your free copy of Filler Up, a fun book filled with gorgeous photographs of fuel filler fun, including quotes from more inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Download your copy today, and we'll see you next time on Cars Yeah.